This episode of Simple Civics Greenville County is brought to you by Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, providing free books to children 0 to 5 throughout Greenville County. To sign up, visit greenvillefirststeps.org/freebooks. That's greenvillefirststeps.org/freebooks.
If you've ever escaped a sweltering Greenville afternoon by heading up to Paris Mountain, laced your boots up at Jones Gap, or pulled over for the view at Caesar's Head, you have enjoyed one of South Carolina's finest public assets, our state parks. I assume you sought out those trails purely for the cardio or the nature, but it's also because we happen to live next door to some of the best our state has to offer. But here's something you might not know. While most state park systems lean heavily on tax dollars, South Carolina's is renowned nationally for largely paying its own way. I'm Katy Smith with Greater Good Greenville, and on this episode of Simple Civics Greenville County, I talk with Gwen Davenport, Sales and Marketing Manager for South Carolina State Parks. Gwen and I will cover the scale of our 47-plus park system and how that operational self-sufficiency model actually works. We'll talk about her insider tips for planning a summer trip when everyone else has the same idea, the special role of our upstate mountain parks, a few hidden gems you might not realize the park system manages, and how these parks serve as economic engines for the rural communities around them. So whether you're a weekend picnicker or a card-carrying ultimate outsider, take a listen, get your calendar out, and let's find your next trip into the great South Carolina outdoors. I'm so glad to be joined by Gwen Davenport with South Carolina State Parks to talk about all the incredible amenities that our state park system has to offer. Gwen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, all right, so we have an incredible array of state parks stretching from the Blue Ridge Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. And for taxpayers, it's always really interesting to see how public assets are managed. And our state park system is actually renowned nationally for its unique financial model. And I'd love for you to talk about that. Can you give us a bird's eye view of the scale of our state park system and explain that self-sufficiency and how it works for residents and visitors?
Sure. So we operate on what is a user-supported model. And we are operationally self-sufficient, and we pride ourselves in that. What that means is our revenue that's generated from admissions, our cabin rentals, our camping programs, that money is reinvested back into our state parks. So the money that we generate goes towards our daily operational costs. So that's why we say we're operationally self-sufficient. And then we reinvest that money into maintaining our facilities, paying our employees, whatever we need to operate on a daily basis. So that's essentially what that means. And it allows us, we kind of control our own destiny as far as our funding goes. And that's why it's important that we promote our state parks and we market our state parks, because we want people coming back, paying that admission, camping with us, so we can generate that money that we need to operate on a daily basis.
I love it. So a great starting point, I think, is for you to give us an overview of our incredible state park system. We have an incredible array of parks stretching all the way from the Blue Ridge Mountains down to the Atlantic coast. Give us an overview of what visitors can enjoy coming to our state parks.
Yes, we have 50 state parks across South Carolina. Most counties have a state park. There are a few that don't. And some counties have multiple state parks, like you're familiar with here in the upstate, of course. And like you said, it ranges from the mountains to the sea and everything in between. We have a park on every major reservoir lake. We have parks on our rivers that provide access to our rivers in our state. We have camping. We have cabins you can rent. We provide thousands of miles of hiking trails, paddling opportunities, biking, just, all kinds of outdoor recreation opportunities across South Carolina. That's what we're here for, to provide access to those special places. And not only do we provide access for recreation, we also have some historical properties and sites that we manage and own in South Carolina.
We have so much history in this state, and I think people are surprised to enjoy things like Revolutionary War sites. What are some of those really interesting historic sites that South Carolina State Parks have?
We almost touch every period of South Carolina history through our state parks. We have our original settlement site, Charlestown Landing, of course, down in Charleston, and that was where the first European settlement site is located.
Right.
So that's a very special place in South Carolina history. We do have a Revolutionary War site at Musgrave Mill in Clinton, South Carolina. We also have a battle site from the Civil War down at Rivers Bridge. So we touch Oconee Station up here in the upstate. It was where the frontier was in South Carolina. So we preserve that and interpret that space. As well as 3 plantation homes. We interpret the people who live there from the people who own the plantation to the people who were enslaved there. We interpret that history at those sites. So
amazing.
Yeah, pretty amazing historic sites in our state parks also.
I love it. So we're releasing this episode right in the middle of summer, which is peak season for getting outside. I'm suspecting it's a peak season for the state parks system. What are your top insider tips for residents and visitors who might be navigating crowded trails or parking lots or full campgrounds? And how are there programs that you have that can support people in that?
So, yes, summertime is very busy across our state parks. We used to think we had an off season in the winter, but what we're seeing is spring, summer, fall, even into the winter months. You know, people want to get outside, and our weather is great enough here that you can do that year round.
Yeah.
And our parks stay open year round. But some insider tips for peak season is, first of all, I tell folks to be flexible.
Yeah.
You know, if you got to go at Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, you might get turned around at some of our parks. But if you can be flexible in that, you probably got a good chance of getting in. We do have to close our gates from time to time just because of the overcrowding and the amount. We only have a certain amount of parking spaces.
Right.
And we have to also, not only do we want to provide access, but we also want to maintain that resource and not let it be too overcrowded and not damage our facilities and things like that. So a good tip is come early or later in the afternoon. If you can be in our parks, by 8 o'clock, you're probably going to get in 8 o'clock in the morning. Later in the afternoon, after 2 o'clock, people kind of get tired, those who got there early and they're ready to go home. And so there's kind of a natural turnover there. But that's not at all of our parks. All of our parks don't close. Some, are less popular, I'd say, and just because of where they're located and whatnot. So that's a tip. Come early in the morning or later in the afternoon, especially at some of our most popular parks. A lot of people have our park passport, which they think guarantees admission. It guarantees entry. It does guarantee your admission.
Yeah.
But if our parks are closed or overcrowded, it does not guarantee that you're going to get in.
Right.
But I'll talk more about that park passport later. We do have some parks that do have some options to guarantee your entry. Devil's Fork has where you can go ahead, which is on Lake Jocassee here in the upstate, has an option where you can reserve a parking space. So you are guaranteed in that day. Jones Gap also offers that on the weekends, Saturday and Sundays. And Myrtle Beach and Huntington Beach along our coast, which are 2 of our very popular parks, they also have that guaranteed admission on the weekends that you can purchase. Yes, it does cost you a little bit more, but you can come and you are guaranteed to get in the gate, even if it's closed. There is a parking space there that you have reserved.
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much because I love to hike, and I love going on y'all's website and being able to say, there's a couple parking spots left, I can snag one. And I'm so happy to pay that $5 entry fee because I don't waste time driving up there not to be able to get in.
That's right. And that's the option at Jones Gap. I believe you pay $5. You reserve your parking spot. You still have to pay admission if you don't have a park passport. But, you pay admission. You got a parking spot when you get there, and you can go in and hike to Rainbow Falls or whatever you want to do that day.
Yeah.
So another tip is to visit during the week. If you got some time off during the week, or maybe you work a job that, you're not traditionally off on the weekends, come visit during the week. That's a great place. We're not as crowded, of course.
Yeah.
I also like to tell folks to plan ahead. If you want that campsite at Myrtle Beach for 4th of July weekend, plan ahead. You can book up to 13 months in advance, and that's a rolling window, so new inventory opens every day. So plan ahead on those beach vacations if you want that camping spot or cabin or whatnot at some of our beach parks or our crowded mountain parks.
Yeah.
And finally, I always tell folks to pack your patience. Our limited staff that we have at our parks are going to be busy. They're doing the best they can. They're trying to get you in. They don't want to turn people away either. But just be patient with us. If they tell you the park's closed, go have lunch, go do another activity, and then come back a little bit later, and it'll probably be open. So, yeah, those are some tips for the busy summer weekends.
I love it. That's great. You mentioned the park passport. It is one of my favorite things. So can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So for $99, you get what we call our park passport, and that gives you admission for you and everyone in your vehicle to every South Carolina state park, all 50, for the period of 1 year. And you can purchase that any time of the year, and it's punched 12 months out. A great time to purchase it is at the beginning of the month, because if you purchase it on June 1st, 2026, you get through the end of June 30th, 2027. So we don't punch by the day. We only punch by the month. So if you purchase in June, you get through the end of June the next year.
Let me just say to folks, if you love getting outside and you don't have one, this is just the best investment you can make. And it's a great gift. If you are new to town or have someone new to town, it is a great way to welcome someone or give someone the gift of the outdoors.
Absolutely. And it is such a value. Some of our parks are $10 plus to get in. It just depends on the park. Admission varies, but you will get your money back within just a couple of visits. And you can use it every day. You can take multiple people in your vehicle. Like I said, it's you and everyone in your vehicle gets in with that park passport.
That's great. So since we are Simple Civics Greenville County, our listeners are deeply invested here, and we are so lucky to have Paris Mountain State Park right in our backyard, along with other staples here like Jones Gap and Caesar's Head just up the road. So from your perspective, because we're very focused on ourselves, what role do these upstate mountain parks play in the larger statewide system? And how do you all balance promoting these really popular spots while also protecting the natural resources there?
So these parks in the upstate are some of our most iconic and most popular. I'll be honest with you. Like you mentioned, Paris Mountain here in Greenville is so popular. Mm-hmm. And people love to go hiking and biking and use that park. Same with Jones Gap. We have a small parking area there, but people love those trails. And then Caesar's Head, iconic, that view from the overlook.
Yeah.
Even over into Table Rock in Pickens County, that is one of our most iconic state parks. So those parks protect some of our most sensitive natural resources in the state of South Carolina. They also showcase our geographic diversity. A lot of people, when you say South Carolina to them, they think, oh, the beach. And people don't even realize we have mountains and waterfalls and hiking trails in the upstate of South Carolina. So it also they showcase our geographic diversity, and they attract a lot of visitors, and visitors who I find that in the Greenville area, the people in Greenville and those visitors, they appreciate these parks and what they offer and provide access to. And they're also very iconic. Like I mentioned, Table Rock. When you see Table Rock, people automatically think South Carolina State Parks or the overlook there at Caesar's Head. They're also some of our most popular and iconic state parks. How do we balance that popularity and providing access? I mean, we talk about loving our parks to death, and people do love these parks to death, but success and people coming to our parks creates pressure on those natural resources. So it's a fine balance. We want people to come to our parks. We need people to come to our parks for the revenue portion of it. And also we want to provide that access to people, but it's a fine balance. So that's where, when it comes to, we have to shut the gates sometimes, or we limit by the amount of parking spaces we have. So that's the balance between providing access and protecting those natural resources.
That's great. So you've alluded to this already, but I'd love to hear you elaborate. So when most people think about a state park, they do picture Paris Mountain State Park, a hiking trail, a picnic shelter, a little pond or lake they can paddle in. But you all have a really diverse portfolio. Historic plantations, as you've mentioned, Revolutionary War battlefields, beaches, a lighthouse. What are some of the hidden gems that you haven't mentioned, or maybe favorites that you'd like to elaborate on?
I think it's funny when I work a consumer show, and I'm talking to people, and I say, have you visited your South Carolina state parks? The first thing they say is, oh, I don't camp. And my response usually is, well, that's great, because you don't have to. You don't have to camp to enjoy our parks. If you want to stay overnight, you certainly can camp. But we also have some awesome villas and cabins in our park system. Up on Lake Jocassee at Devil's Fork, we have very modern villas that provide all the comforts of home. Some are nicer than my home on some days. Beautiful 2 and 3 bedroom villas that overlook Lake Jocassee. You've got Wi-Fi, you've got television, you've got fireplace, you've got outdoor grills, you've got everything you need to enjoy that space. And then we have our more quaint CCC cabins at a park like Table Rock State Park. That are historic cabins, but they are so cozy and beautiful, and also provide all those amenities. But some of the other unexpected things you can see in our state parks are a park like Lansford Canal State Park, which is on the Catawba River, just south of Charlotte, to give you a little geographic location there, which is home to the world's largest known stand of the Rocky Shoal spider lilies. They bloom from about mid-May to mid-June, so we're right in the blooming season, and they bloom in the middle of the Catawba River. Have you seen them?
No,
you need to go see them.
I gotta get my passport and head over
Get your passport.
Yeah.
We have a trail where you can view them from the overlook, or the most awesome way to see them is paddling the Catawba River, kayaking. I've done that several times. It is like you're in a sea of white lilies.
Oh my goodness.
It's awesome and amazing. We have a festival that commemorates the bloom each year, and it is just a sight to behold, and people come from everywhere to check out those lilies. So that's one example of that unexpected thing we have in state parks. I mentioned Musgrove Mill, a Revolutionary War battle site, very important now that we're here in the 250th anniversary of our nation. It was a pivotal battle where outnumbered patriots defeated loyalists there right near Clinton, South Carolina, and it's right off the interstate. It's easy to access. It's got a great history. So that battle site, I mentioned Rivers Bridge is a Civil War battle site along the Sakahatchee River, and it interprets that battle, the people who fought there, who died there. That's where we encountered Sherman on his march to Columbia, there at Rivers Bridge. I mentioned Charlestown Landing, the birthplace, the first European settlement site. In 1670, that's where Charleston started.
Just amazing.
Before it moved out down to the harbor, the settlers landed there, and we interpret that 10-year history that they lived there. We also have a zoo at that site. A lot of people don't know that. It's a zoo of the animals that would have been native to South Carolina at that time when the settlers landed.
Wow.
So there are bison there.
What?
Pumas, black bear. They were there in that area when the settlers arrived. And so we have that natural habitat zoo there at Charlestown Landing. Oconee Station, we interpret our frontier history here in South Carolina. It's near Walhalla, not too far from here. That was the frontier at that time. So we interpret that and how the interaction with the Native Americans there at that frontier outpost there at Oconee Station. We have 2 golf courses in our state parks. I know there's a lot of golfers in South Carolina. We have 2 championship golf courses. Both are currently being redone right now. So they're going to be back awesome, better than ever in September of this year. They should reopen. One is at Hickory Knob State Resort Park in McCormick, and one at Cheraw State Park.
Wow.
They're very popular golf courses. People come from all over to play them, and they're a great value, of course. We provide paddling on black rivers. If you've never been on a black river in South Carolina, like the Edisto River or the Black River in Georgetown, they're beautiful, and you can paddle those rivers, a leisurely paddle, between parks. You can put in at Givans Ferry State Park and get out at Colleton State Park.
Okay, I love this. What is a black river? I should know that.
They're called tannin-stained waters, and I think that's what gives it that black color.
That's really neat.
And there you see a lot of cypress trees, of course, with the cypress knees and all, and so it's really cool when you're paddling along those rivers.
So all these amazing parks are so embedded in our experience and recreation as South Carolinians. They are approaching a 100-year anniversary. Tell us about the history of the park system.
Right. So our state park system started with the Civilian Conservation Corps when President Roosevelt created that group to put young men back to work during the Great Depression, and he put them back to work building parks. And that is where our state park system started. So parks like Table Rock State Park here in the upstate, Myrtle Beach State Park along the coast, Poinsett State Park in the Midlands, those parks, there's 16 parks that were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps, which we call the CCC. And that's where our roots come from. Myrtle Beach State Park was the first state park to open back on July 1st, 1936. So they will be celebrating their 90th birthday on July 1st. And we have some activities planned around that. Our first state park that we actually got land for, however, was Cheraw State Park. And that started where school children started donating their pennies.
Wow.
And from that collection, we were able to buy the land for Cheraw State Park.
I love it.
That's how we purchased our first tract of land for a state park. However, Myrtle Beach State Park was the first to open.
It's such a great story of clever government problem solving,
Right.
and just how a legacy of wonderful things can come out of a really dark time in American history.
Right,
And
exactly.
good problem solving.
And we have had the fortune to interview some of those fellas that worked in the CCC. Most of them are gone now.
Sure.
But a lot of them have said, if I knew what I was doing, I'd have done a better job. The legacy,
Right.
the legacy that they've built and the parks that have lasted so long. And the cool thing about these parks, if you go to any of the CCC parks, they were built with materials found in that area.
Yeah.
So the parks built here in the upstate, you'll see a lot of rock work and things like that. The coast is a bit different. So it's they use the resources that were in that area.
I mean, Greenville listeners, if you didn't know that, or you haven't been to Paris Mountain State Park, I mean, it's so easy to get to. The visitor center is just a prime example of exactly what Gwen's talking about. I mean, it's a beautiful building built by these young men who were there to give themselves and their families a better chance out of the Great Depression. It's really so great.
And we call that architecture left behind that still is here today. We call it parkitecture. So that's kind of the buzzword there of that CCC, those CCC structures. We call them parkitecture.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Beyond parks being beautiful places to spend a Saturday, they are a massive economic engine for South Carolina, especially for those smaller rural communities, some of which you've mentioned that surround them. So let us know how parks impact local economies and how everyday citizens can get involved, whether through volunteering, advocacy, whatever might be helpful.
Yeah, so we bring in into some of our parks thousands of visitors a year. And those visitors, not only are they coming into the park and spending their money, but they spend money outside of the park. They buy gas, they buy groceries, they buy supplies, especially if they're camping and staying overnight. We don't have all of those things at our state park, so they go out into the local communities and buy those things. That's how tourism dollars reach rural areas. We create jobs. We have our full-time staff at our parks, but many of our parks during busy seasons, especially the summer, hire additional employees. So we do create jobs in those areas. Our parks contribute to quality of life in those rural communities where you have a space you can go and recreate and enjoy the outdoors. And we also provide educational programs for kids and programs for adults too, not just kids. We cover the entire age spectrum. It also provides a community identity. These small communities that are home to these parks, and I use where I live, near Prosperity, South Carolina, Deer Island State Park is located on Lake Murray, and that park and that community are closely tied. You know, that is a gem in their community there in the Prosperity area, and just the same here in Greenville.
That's right.
It's a bigger community. But Paris Mountain, if you live in Greenville, you probably know and love Paris Mountain State Park. And again, we provide spaces for field trips. We have a junior ranger program, places to learn about nature and history. So it's just a big asset, especially to these smaller rural communities.
That's great. So many of you listening are high civics achievers, and Gwen has an incredible opportunity for you if you want to be one of the ultimate supporters of the state park system. So Gwen, tell everybody about that.
Absolutely. We have a program. It's called the Ultimate Outsider Program. And the way this program started is we knew everybody went to Paris Mountain and everybody went to Table Rock and everybody went to Hunting Island along our coast. But not everybody went to Oconee Station near Walhalla or Lansford Canal that I talked about earlier, or Little PD State Park in the PD area of our state. So we were like, how can we get these people to branch out and visit these smaller parks along with the large parks? So we came up with the Ultimate Outsider Program. So with this program, you get a book, our park guide, and each park has its own individual stamp in the book. So when you visit, you have to find the stamp and get your stamp. Now, once you have visited all 50 parks and gotten all 50 stamps, you get a ranger to verify your book saying that you have done that, and they send it in to us, and we send you what has become a very expensive T-shirt. Because you might think South Carolina is a small state, but when you visit all 50 South Carolina state parks, you realize how many back roads and places you've never seen in the state. I've done it before. I did it in 7 days.
In 7 days?
In 7 days. That was part of work. We had a challenge, and we put it on social media and had a lot of fun with it. but you can take as long as you want to.
Okay.
I know some people have taken a year to do it. Some people take a couple of years. I've even heard some people have done it in 5 or 6 years, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hold on to your book, get your stamps. Currently, we have 5,475 Ultimate Outsiders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and those people become some of our biggest ambassadors because they visited every park. They know a little bit about each park, and they'll tell you, when something's not exactly right or when you've done a good job. So they are a good sounding board for our state parks. We actually have a little private Facebook group where they can give their opinions and stay together and talk. We also have special behind-the-scenes kind of programs for these folks that they can only attend. So it's a pretty exclusive little group, and I say little, over 5,000 people, and it's growing every day. But it really gives you an overview of not only state parks, but the entire state of South Carolina. And what we find is people who thought their favorite park was maybe a Table Rock or a Hunting Island, they are now drawn to these smaller parks because they had this special experience at a smaller park or realized just how beautiful it was or what that park had to offer. So now the Barnwell State Parks, where they caught their first fish, becomes their favorite state park. And it's really just spread people out and given them a greater appreciation for our state park system and the state of South Carolina. And, it's the diversity that we have to offer here.
Love this. Okay, I have to say, I followed a colleague on LinkedIn who completed it in a year.
Right.
And I thought, that's really neat. Hearing you talk right now, I'm thinking, I got to get my hands on that book. Well, it does feel like this is a challenge we can issue to all of you listening because you're people who care and get outside and love this state and this community. So I bet some of you will give it a shot after listening.
Yep, absolutely. It's a fun thing to do. Like I said, I did it in 7 days and we were worn out. I mean, it is a lot of miles across this small state of South Carolina, but yeah, and you see so many things, not just our parks, but the back roads and everything in between.
Lots of boiled peanuts you can
absolutely,
buy,
yes.
which that's
for sure
half the value of the journey. Well, Gwen, you have definitely inspired me to get outside this summer and year-round and better equipped me in doing so, and I know our listeners appreciate it too. Thanks so much for being here and for all that you do.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, Simple Civics Greenville County listeners, Nathaniel here. If you've made it this far, then we think you'll really love our newsletter. Sign up for bonus content, updates, and more right in your inbox. Look for the link in the description that says newsletter to sign up, or visit us at simpleCivicsGreenvilleCounty.org. Find the link in the menu that says newsletter and sign up there. We'll see you again next week.